Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're looking at something absolutely fascinating. We're talking about a highly innovative middle school math curriculum that intentionally traps kids in their own bad decisions. And why do they do this? To teach them a critical lesson that mathematical reality has to override our emotional impulses. Listen to this. A sixth grader actually wrote this after finishing the curriculum. The math wasn't the hard part. The hard part was listening to the math when everything was pulling me somewhere else. I mean, that is incredibly profound, right? Calculating the numbers, sure, that's just simple arithmetic. But fighting your own psychology, that innate urge to make the exciting, flashy choice instead of the safe one, that is the real challenge here.
So, it really begs the question, how exactly do you teach a sixth grader to outsmart their own brain? Well, the answer lies in a brilliantly disguised psychological game called the arena.
Which brings us to Section 1, Welcome to the Arena.
So here's the basic setup. Students are thrust into this really intense, role-based financial planning scenario. They're given a 10-day cascade structure and a $5,000 budget to manage a 3-day basketball tournament. They work in small teams of 3 to 4, and here is where it gets super clever. Each student gets a highly specific job. You've got your calculator, your recorder, your reporter, and the strategist.
Now, what's really interesting about this setup is the strategist. This isn't your everyday run-of-the-mill group project job. The strategist is tasked exclusively with asking, okay, what could go wrong, before the team commits to literally any decision. They have to explicitly name what the team does not know. This unique role forces metacognition. It basically makes the kids think about how they're thinking, and it actively hits the brakes when the team tries to react purely on feeling.
All right, moving on to Section 2. The boring choice wins.
If you look at the financial outcomes here, the gap is just staggering. The curriculum is quite literally rigged so that the methodical, boring choice structurally wins every time. Teams that take the flashy path, booking the giant city rec center, buying concessions in bulk to get a discount, taking risky performance sponsorships, they end up scraping by with a measly $148 profit. But the teams that take the boring path, the mid-sized Lincoln School gym, daily concession buys, and safe, guaranteed cash sponsorships, they walk away with a massive $2,138.
Let's break down the actual math behind those venues. The City Rec Center has all these flashy amenities that kids naturally gravitate towards, right? It looks super cool. But the boring Lincoln School wins mathematically. Why? Because the most important metric isn't the shiny features, it's the cost per court ratio. Lincoln School costs $175 per court. The Rec Center costs $200 per court and immediately eats up 36% of their total cash right out of the gate.
Let's shift gears to Section 3. 4 hidden cognitive traps.
So, the crucial point is that these cognitive traps are literally hard-coded right into the simulation's timeline. The creators engineered specific moments where biases hijack the tournament before the kids even know the names of these traps. On day 4, anchoring hits when they see their first sponsorship offer. On day 5, optimism bias strikes when they wildly overestimate attendance. Day 6 brings the classic sunk cost fallacy, and day 7 just unleashes the framing effect.
Put yourself in the shoes of a 12-year-old on day 7 for a second. Would you take a guaranteed $200 cash sponsorship from a local trophy shop, or would you take a quote-unquote free radio ad that has a 50% chance of bringing in 50 extra attendees? It's really easy to build empathy for the students here because almost everyone falls victim to the framing effect, and it's all triggered by that one magic word, free.
But, do the math. The true expected value of that radio deal is only $195. That's a 50% chance of making $390 and a 50% chance of making absolutely zero. $195 is mathematically lower than the guaranteed $200. This teaches a really painful lesson to the students. Opportunity cost is a very real cost.
Okay, on to Section 4, the emotional cascade.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when day 5 hits and optimism bias basically slams into reality. Almost every team projects they'll get 175 attendees. Reality delivers exactly 140. But look at how this feels depending on the venue. For teams in the giant rec center, 140 people means the space is 65% empty. It feels like a total disaster. But for teams in the smaller Lincoln gym, 140 people means the space is 56% full. It feels completely normal. It's the exact same math, but a completely different psychological impact.
But if day 5 was a letdown, day 6 is a full-blown crisis. The simulation drops a weather disruption right in their laps. It rained. Your tournament started 2 hours late. Suddenly everything is thrown out the window, and the teams are forced into a complete pivot, requiring some serious adaptive strategy.
Attendance plummets down to 95. Just 95 people show up. Now think about the immediate financial damage done to the teams that took that seductive 20% bulk concession discount back on day 3. They bought hot dogs and lemonade for 175 people, and now all that perishable food is just rotting in real time right in front of them.
And this leads to this incredible, real reaction from a student. We need to sell more tomorrow to make up for today's waste. I mean, that is the absolute peak of the sunk cost fallacy. Lowering prices tomorrow isn't going to unspoil today's hot dogs. And what's really amazing is that educators are explicitly instructed to let the kids sit in this emotional discomfort. They don't jump in to rescue them. The discomfort literally is the lesson.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Building Lifelong Decision Skills.
Let's move on and see how this builds across the timeline. On day 10, students reflect on their whole journey. They look at day 1, where they were super confidently reacting to flashy features and gut feelings. Then they analyze day 5, the commitment fulcrum, where they actually had to name their uncertainty before locking in their plan. And finally, day 9, where they reconciled the final data and realized, usually the hard way, that the boring choice mathematically won.
Here is the ultimate twist of the whole thing, the grading rubric. Students are never graded on their actual tournament profit. No, instead they are graded on developing specific core reasoning skills, which the curriculum calls the patience capacities. We're talking about adaptive strategy, collaborative and independent reasoning, information discernment, and emotional regulation under pressure. So a team that loses money but demonstrates an honest awareness of their own biases will actually score higher than a team that made a profit just by getting lucky.
At the very end of the whole experience, educators read this closing mantra to the students. 3 things a tournament manager always asks. What does the math actually say? What could still go wrong? And who am I deciding for? It just beautifully cements the curriculum's ultimate goal, which is creating truly resilient, data-driven decision makers.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. The next time you are faced with an exciting, flashy choice, maybe it's a new investment, a major purchase, or some big project at work, will you have the courage to listen to the boring math? It really does make you wonder, how often are our own adult decisions being hijacked by the exact same cognitive traps that those 6th graders just conquered?